much. How's everyone doing? You all right? Yes. Thanks so much for coming to the third ever Weekly Sceptic Live. Woo! I'm doing my own woo, so I know you're not those kind of people, really. You're like, yeah, all right, Nick, stop whooping. Get on with talking about the decline of Britain. But anyway, so who is coming to one of these for the first time? Oh, you're very much a hands-up crowd. We need noise because we're filming this and everything. It's not a library, guys. And who is so who's never been to one of these before? Okay, all right, okay, some people. All right, basically all it is very simple. It's a topical podcast where we talk about the week's news from a light-hearted, far-right angle. That's all it is. I do some version of that joke every time and it always gets a laugh. Because it's true. So, no, that's the same joke again. I'm just kidding. Toby's centre, right? And that's the same joke 3 times, basically. But so we booked this thing a while ago. You never know how the news is going to go. It's just like, it's just luck, really. We've had quite a lucky week, actually. There's been some quite interesting stories. I keep hearing this phrase, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. I first heard that, I was like, oh no, Toby's in the news again. But it was actually Joe Biden, so we'll get into that one. And then, of course, Tucker Carlson went all the way over to Russia just to have essentially a boring history lecture from an old bald man. I was like, you could have just called my dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I get every week. So we'll talk about that story, and then we'll do some domestic stuff because, of course, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer had this thing in the House of Commons where it ended with Starmer accusing Rishi of a lack of integrity. Really? The integrity angle, if you're Starmer, is that where you go? It's kind of like Ted Bundy accusing someone of having issues with women. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not the thing I would go with if I was Starmer. Anyway, so we'll get into all of that. It's all very simple. Then we'll do some of the stories and peak woke, of course. Peak woke, guys. There you go. That's a sort of groan for peak woke. That's as enthusiastic as our crowd gets. But we'll do that, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. I think we're going to pass around the mic this time. If you want to ask me or Toby anything, probably, I don't know anything, but you can ask Toby. He's very important. And then we're going to have drinks for those of you paid, obviously, because we're grifters. This is what I'm told online, because we charge money for services, so that makes us grifters, apparently. So Toby, I won't be drinking tonight. Toby will, obviously, but I'm on antibiotics, so I'll just have Coke, just nothing crazy, couple of lines, that'll be fine. And I think that is pretty much the night, so I don't want to waste too much time. So I think let's just get on with it and welcome the man that probably 30% of you have come to see. It is, of course, Mr. Toby Young. I went with 30%. I'm sorry about that. All right. So, Toby, this is a bit where I always think we should have planned some banter, but I've got absolutely nothing. Is there anything you want to say by way of introduction?
Not really, no. I've planned no banter either. But we should say thank you to all of the people that have taken time out of their otherwise busy Monday night schedules to come and see us tonight. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks to all the subscribers of basedmedia.org as well. It's our new platform. You can get all the extra content and all that. But anyway, I don't want to waste too much time plugging things. You've come to a live show, so we should probably crack on. Did everyone watch the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin? Yeah? Oh, good. You do more work than Toby. I've watched the whole blooming thing, and I've watched people's 3-hour reactions to the 3-hour video. It's absolutely insane. So I know so much about it. But it was actually essentially quite boring. Did anyone think it was good? Yes. Did you? What was good about it?
He was lucid.
Who was? Putin. Yeah. Yeah, better than Biden.
Correct.
Yeah. I love that. He was lucid. That's like the bar now. He could talk and form thoughts. It was incredible. He was like an adult human. Huh?
Not dying.
Oh yeah, not dying of cancer. Yeah, because everyone said he was much more ill than he seemed. He seemed totally fine. Yeah, rumors of his demise have been exaggerated. Yeah, I know. So that's a couple of angles. It wasn't quite as soft as some predicted. Like, everyone's like, Tucker's just going to do softball questions like, what's your favorite color? It wasn't like that. It wasn't like, so when are you going to take over the United States? It wasn't like, it was sort of, because people were worried, Tucker likes this guy too much. But I think Tucker was pretty tough. He had to go at him about the journalist. Is it Evan Gersovich? He's the Wall Street Journal journalist that's kind of in prison in Russia for a year, and Putin's like, yeah, he's in prison. It's like, it's quite hard to get out of that one. Yeah, people are in prison sometimes. What do you say to that? Some people are, some people are. But I don't want to do too much on it, Toby. Let's get your take first before I waffle on.
Yeah, I was, as you say, I didn't watch the entire thing from start to finish. It did seem almost mind-destroyingly boring. It was you kind of felt for Tucker. Here he was, kind of having got this interview. I think it was the first interview Putin had given to an American journalist since 2021. He hasn't given an interview to a Western journalist, I think, since invading Ukraine, or rather denazifying it, which is how you put it. So it was a tremendous opportunity, and Tucker actually said, he presented it as no other Western journalist had bothered to approach Putin to ask him for an interview, and he couldn't understand why. But in fact, as the BBC Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg pointed out, the BBC has actually approached Putin 4 times for an interview since the invasion of Ukraine, been declined every time. But he obviously thought that he wasn't going to be challenged that much by Tucker, and maybe Tucker was. He prepared some questions, and they weren't all soft questions, but Tucker didn't seem prepared for the history lesson. He hadn't mugged up on Russian history, Ukrainian history, so he was kind of slightly wrong-footed by that, and you could see him looking slightly bewildered and thinking, my God, am I going to have to spend... I've moved heaven and earth to get this scoop. First Western journalist to interview this guy in ages, first American journalist since 2021, and he's just going to give me this unbelievably dull history lesson for the next 2 hours. You could see him kind of thinking, was it all worth it? But I've come up with a few... There
was a bit, wasn't there, when Tucker was like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost. Which period of history is this? And Putin just looked and went, the 13th century. Like, what? Bro, get with it. We're talking about the Varangian settlers or something. It was a bit. It's like at one point, it's like, so why did you invade Ukraine? It's like Prince Yaroslav the Wise. Like, 17th century. Like, anyway. So yeah, Tucker got a bit more than he bargained for there.
A bit more than he bargained for, and it did mean that Putin got away with making some slightly misleading claims, both about recent and ancient history, which Tucker didn't challenge him.
I'm guessing you're about to go through them now in autistic detail.
I've got a few examples. So
Putin would have met his match with Toby in terms of detail.
Putin claimed that James Baker assured Gorbachev that NATO wouldn't expand 1 inch beyond East Germany in 1990, but actually in the text of that 1990 agreement, there is no promise on NATO's part not to expand beyond East Germany.
It says 2 inches.
Putin claimed that Boris dissuaded Zelensky from signing a peace deal that would have ended the conflict in a couple of months. But Boris understandably denied that and claimed that he didn't have that kind of influence over Zelensky. That was a matter for the sovereign government of Ukraine, which seems like a pretty solid rebuttal.
That must have been tough for Boris, like his defences wasn't that important.
Yeah,
right?
no,
that's not the kind of thing he likes to say.
He doesn't like to fall back on that one. Putin presented the colonization of Siberia, the Caucasus, Central Asia, as he used this phrase, or it was translated as voluntary unification, overlooking the many occasions on which the Russian army massacred people in those regions for refusing to assimilate. The Speaker of the Polish Parliament, he was quite critical. He said, his historical and literary reflections about Poland can be falsified by a person who has finished the 4th grade of primary school and is at least a little interested in the history of the region.
You suddenly went from Hitler then to you went generic Russian, Hitler back to generic Russian, but it was a Pole. Okay.
And the most
you
egregious...
don't get, this is what you get on the live show, Toby's accents. This is amazing.
Not as good as Nick's. But the most egregious falsehood about Poland was that he claimed that the Poles were collaborationists. They'd collaborated with the Nazis and essentially invited the Nazis to just kind of annex Polish territory in 1939. Completely bizarre, obviously false and easily proven false claim. We all know who the collaborationists were with the Nazis in 1939. It wasn't the Poles, it was the Soviets who signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and essentially divvied up Poland between them. And 2 weeks after the Nazis invaded Poland, the Russians invaded Poland. So that was, you can understand why the Speaker of the Polish Parliament was upset by that particular...
I feel a bit like Tucker now trying to follow this. I'm like, you're Putin, and I'm going, when's he going to talk about trans people? This is boring. That's what Tucker wanted. Tucker went there for some red meat for his audience. What do you think about women's sports? What do you think about gays? But he didn't do that. It was all like boring Russian history, you know. That was one. Have you done your... Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Have you finished your...
One more.
Okay, one more.
One more. Which I was disappointed Tucker didn't challenge him on, because you would have thought even Tucker would have known this was just errant nonsense. Putin said that Russia had never threatened Ukraine or the West with nuclear weapons. And, in 2022, Putin said, Our country has weapons of mass destruction, some even more modern than NATO's. And if there is a threat to the territorial integrity of our country and to the protection of our citizens, we will use all means at our disposal. And it's not a bluff. So that seems like a pretty threatening thing to say. He's clearly, and numerous times Medvedev, the vice president of the Russian Security Council, has threatened the West as recently as mid-January with kind of a nuclear strike if they think that Russia's territorial integrity is under threat, or if we use long-range missiles and so on and so forth. So that was just obviously a complete lie, which I hoped Putin might have challenged him on, but didn't.
So what you're saying is Putin is not a totally straight shooter.
He's not a straight shooter, and I think that you're right that Tucker wasn't complete. He wasn't a pushover. I mean, Hillary Clinton, I think, described him as a useful idiot. I think that's a bit harsh, but I think he could have anticipated that Putin would have, bombarded him with this kind of completely garbled version of recent and ancient history in order to justify the invasion of Ukraine, and mugged up a bit on that. So he was ready to challenge some of the falsehoods instead of just letting them wash over him.
Yeah, he put that little prologue bit on it. He said, well, look, I thought this was filibustering at first, but now I think it was sincere. I'm not sure it was sincere. I mean, there's two sort of schools of thought. I mean, yes, there's the thing that he was far more lucid than our leaders. I mean, that's almost become a cliche now because so many people have said it. It was very stark on the same week when Biden was deemed sort of legally incompetent in that special counselling we'll get into. That he was too old to remember stuff, and we've got Putin without notes just recited thousands of years of history. So that was a stark difference, obviously. But the question is, did Carlson actually get schooled, right, and get embarrassed, or did he just? Was it kind of like? Was Putin just doing what verbal Kint in The Usual Suspects? Remember The Usual Suspects? When does anyone get this reference? Am I too old, too young? Kaiser Soze. So in The Usual Suspects, Spacey just lists all these things. It turns out he's just reading them off the wall. Spoiler alert, it did come out in 96 or something. But anyway, and he basically just making this whole story up, but he's just riffing on it. What I started to think later was Putin, was it really this great victory, or did he just wear him down with just basically nonsense, just wearing him out? That serves two functions if you think about The Usual Suspects analogy, which I'm going with. One is it sort of it distracts and befuddles, and the other is it's just a sort of F you, really. It's just sort of saying, I'm having some fun at your expense by going into this ridiculous detail that you can't disprove. In other words, what I'm saying is, was it like, oh, that's impressive, Putin knows his stuff, or was it just simply he's just steamrolling Carlson just because he can, just for a laugh?
I think it was playing. I think Putin was kind of targeting two audiences. He was targeting the American electorate in a presidential election year, hoping that if Trump wins, he's going to reduce America's support for Zelensky. So that I think was one constituency he was targeting with all the stuff about denazification. There really was no such country called Ukraine before Lenin invented it. All kinds of nonsense. But also, I think a lot of the history about Mother Russia, Catherine the Great, Peter the Great, that was clearly aimed, I think, at the domestic electorate because there is a presidential election coming up in Russia. I mean, Putin's going to win because he's jailed half the opposition candidates, but nevertheless, I think he wants to win by a landslide, and he was pandering to his kind of patriotic Russian electorate there, I think.
That's what I ended up thinking, because there was all these rumours, he's going to use it to sort of say stuff that Tucker Carlson's audience likes and appeal to America. In the end, I think he was just appealing to Russia. I don't think he cared. He was just dismissing the whole West. He's like, I'm big mates with Xi. You had the chance to be friends with Russia, you all blew it, and now I don't care about the West. You're kind of irrelevant. It's a new world order. Is that the vibe you got?
But why do the interview then?
That's it.
I think not just because it would kind of amplify what he has to say to Russians, and they're more likely to listen if he says it to an important Western journalist. I think he was also, he wants to kind of undermine support for Ukraine in the West. He can see that it's beginning to falter a little bit. It's not as popular as it was. If Trump replaces Biden, America could easily withdraw some of its support. I mean, Trump said this week, he was cited as saying that, we're going to get
into this. We'll do it later. The NATO thing.
We'll get into it. We'll get into it.
So, all right, that's pretty much, we don't want to end up, Toby's criticised the length of the Tucker interview. It was about the length of one episode of the Weekly Sceptic, so it's still not that long, is it? But I don't want to do too much on it. I know it's a live show, and it's quite hard because it's quite a boring topic originally, and now we're talking about it, so I don't want to get too bored. Who thought that Tucker won? No one. Okay, who thought that Putin won? Okay, two people. So most people thought there was no winner. That's what I'm getting from that. There's no winner when Tucker talks. But yeah, they did seem a bit like that. Like, what was the point of it? Maybe there was no winner. All right, maybe we'll move on to Biden then, because I feel like we've exhausted that. We don't want to be like Putin and just start boring everyone. So Biden, there's a lot of Biden news this week. The big thing is that this special counsel, Robert Hur, described Biden as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, as I've mentioned already. And he said his memory was significantly limited. And this was about when he couldn't even remember when he was vice president and things like this. And so his point was no jury would convict this guy because he's obviously just old and incompetent. And then at the same time, he's president of the United States. So that's slightly jarring to some people, you know. And so I'm not quite sure why this came out at this point. I've been trying to work it out. So this guy, Hur, was nominated by Trump in 2017 to be U.S. Attorney for Maryland. And so people seem to think he's like a serious guy. He's got a long and distinguished career and all this kind of thing. So was this released to help Biden? So the whole point was Biden can't be accused of keeping documents. He's obviously kept documents way more than Trump's kept documents in a way more dodgy way. But the idea is he's so incompetent, it's not illegal. So was this released to like humiliate Biden, or was it just this guy's honest legal opinion, or what?
No, I think it was released to humiliate Biden. He decided not to prosecute him, but he didn't want to let him off the hook entirely. So he gave us his reason for not prosecuting him. That it's what's called the senility defence.
Nice.
Which can be quite powerful. And when he described him, as you quoted earlier, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
Yeah, I know you're reading that off notes.
Yeah, you've got a clipboard in your hand.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I got a clipboard.
But it was.
This has nothing on it.
It was. It was quite. It was sort of. He twisted. You could see the knife going in and then being twisted. You know, he saves with a poor memory to the last bit, and then he illustrates this by saying that he couldn't remember when his vice presidency began, because this relates to when he was vice president.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember when his vice presidency finished, and couldn't remember the year his son Beau died. Which was that, and that seemed to rile up Biden, who then gave this press conference in which he tried to rebut the implication that he was.
And just quickly, he also couldn't remember which country he was vice president of. That was the big one. I'm joking. That wasn't one of them. That wasn't one. Sorry, carry on.
So it was pretty damning. And at this hastily convened press conference, where Biden wanted to reassure the American public that actually had all his marbles about him and there was nothing wrong with his memory, misidentified Sisi, who is the Egyptian president, as the president of Mexico. So that was a disastrous press conference. It just confirmed exactly what the special counsel had said about him.
And what was really bad is he went back to the mic to do that. He'd actually got away with it. He's like, oh, tell you what, I'm going to walk back and end my career. It was hilarious. He'd already left. He's like, oh, so let me say one more thing. Mexico, Egypt, like, what are you doing? But that press conference, he really lost it as well. He really got angry. And one thing is actually reasonably funny. There's this guy, Peter Doocy, who's the only guy that ever asked a tough question, right? Because he's from Fox. And he actually said to me, like, what's up with your memory, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I got a memory, my bad memory. My memory's so bad, I let you speak. Which was actually like reasonably funny, I thought. That was like reasonably funny. But then he just went off and sounded nuts. And he actually was... And the press, what was notable... Sorry if you had more on the other thing, but what was notable is they actually turned on him in the press conference and they just went for him and actually asked him reasonably tough questions. And there were all these stories in the lib media about, like, is Biden losing it? And they weren't like the usual spin. Like, normally when the Independent reports it, it'll be like, is Biden losing his memory? No, definitely not. But like in these, they were just actually asking the questions. And it's like, oh, have they all turned on him? Have they now, as someone said, right, we're getting rid of this guy, and they've just flicked the switch?
It feels like the dam has broken. I mean, for years, the mainstream American media have been covering up the fact that Biden is losing his memory and may well be suffering from dementia.
Not that well, but they've been trying to.
Well, but it doesn't get widely reported in the kind of liberal media like the New York Times, CNN, and someone's compared this to people, the media who are sympathetic to FDR in the 1940s, particularly during the Second World War, didn't mention the fact that he was in a wheelchair, that his paralysis was so bad he spent most of his time in a wheelchair. That was unreported on during the Second World War. JFK had crippling back pain and was dependent on pain-killing drugs. That only came out after he'd been assassinated because the press were unwilling to report on that for fear of undermining JFK. And a similar sort of deferential complicity has characterized the reporting of Biden's disability until now. But it feels like the dam has now broken. He's declared open season on himself by this absurd press conference. It was described as the worst day of Biden's presidency. And polls say that 3/4 of the American public are now concerned about the mental fitness of the president, and even half of Democrat voters are concerned about it. Hillary Clinton has come out and said it's a legitimate concern. So I don't think it can be covered up anymore.
She said it's a legitimate concern, but he needs to use his experience, which is kind of the nicest thing you could possibly say, I guess, isn't it? I mean, he's got a lot of experience. But yeah, I mean, Ted Cruz said it was like the press were ignoring their orders, but it seemed to me like they had new orders. I mean, I'm very obviously cynical about that. I just think they're all Democrats, but they were actually really going for him. So, but the question is then, who are they going to replace him with? Because if they're going to get rid of him, it's just they must have someone. You know, is it Gavin Newsom, who has a terrible record in California? My outside theory is Nikki Haley. Even though she claims to be a Republican, right? Just bring her in. They know she does quite well. Let's bring her in. She's a Democrat anyway. Is it going to be Big Mike? Some people get that. That's what some terrible people on the internet call Michelle Obama. Obviously, definitely not a man. Let's be very clear. Totally a woman. She's imagine that's what Trump's first thing he'd be like. She's a man. She's totally a man. Look at the dress. And we saw it. And look at it. Yeah. Imagine like every day, just like we looked at the dress, and many people are saying it's a penis. They call it Big Mike. Yeah. Big Mike. They call it Big Mike. Anyway, that's it. He'll destroy it. But would he play that card, or don't we just be too unpopular? I don't know. Anyway. Will it be Big Mike, Toby? I know you've texted me privately, yes, it's a man. She's got a penis. I can't say that publicly because of my donors. You said, what was the message? You said, I've got fiduciary responsibilities, but yeah, she's totes a man. Anyway, who are they going to? I can't believe this is the level I've had to bring it to, just to desperately get some laughs. Go on, Toby. What's your take? Who will they replace him with?
Well,
and is Big Mike?
I think Kamala Harris has said she's willing to serve.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, I think at this stage it might be difficult to. I mean, he doesn't show any signs of wanting to stand down. Jill Biden, who is the obvious person to make a kind of charitable intervention, shows no inclination to do that, maybe because she's basically running the country. So in all likelihood, I think if it's not him, it's going to be Kamala, and probably, I can't see him withdrawing. I think it's possible that if he does run, I don't think he'll win, but if he did, I think then he might step down after a year or so.
Do you think Hillary will have to take him out? Don't put that on the video. We can't release that. But because he's not going to step down. Like you said, it's a great question. Who is running the country? Because Ted, huh? Obama. You think Obama with the puppet theory? Yeah. He did say once he would be happy to just run it from the basement, didn't he? And he'd let someone else call the shots. He may have been joking, but yeah. So interesting theory on that. So Ted Cruz today on his podcast was saying, he suddenly realized Biden is running the country because of this kind of response and this angry response from the press, suggesting like we need to get rid of this guy. And the theory is, because think about it, if he's not really running things, they can just quietly get rid of him. But if he actually does have some power, they're like, oh, how do we get rid of this guy? Right? It becomes an issue. So maybe he has more power than we think. Kamala, no, because she polls well amongst, I think, black women, but basically no one else. And she's too awful. So I don't think she has a chance. Biden likes her. I think they're in real trouble. I think that's why he hasn't been yanked earlier, obviously, because they just don't have anyone.
He keeps making things worse for himself as well. I mean, he keeps making these ludicrous gaffes, which just make him seem more and more ridiculous. He didn't just mistake the president of Mexico for the president of Egypt. On February 7th, I think he said that at a summit that he attended last year, he asked Helmut Kohl how he would have responded to the January 6th Capitol riots. And Helmut Kohl died in 2017. And then 3 days later in Las Vegas, he said that Mitterrand had challenged him about something. And he initially, the funny thing about that was he got that wrong. He described Mitterrand as
The German.
as the German
Yeah, they
chancellor,
went,
and
"France,
then quickly
France."
corrected himself, and then France, as though he'd gotten out of that one, just dodged that bullet. Mitterrand died in 1996. I mean, it was.
But he was French when he was alive. Yeah.
He was French.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Did he stop being French? That's it. Yeah, so he's making it so much worse for himself. And I'll get onto that in a minute. Whether Trump gave him an open goal this week, but with this NATO thing. But I heard a rumor today as well that he's been saying, like, why didn't they just put Trump in jail sooner and start this whole process sooner? Because now he's having to deal with him. Because but these people don't care about democracy or anything. I mean, and this is what I said when Biden got in. Who am I? Just some layman. But I said, this is the end of America. This is not a real regime. But they don't care about anything. They put our opponents in jail. Apparently, he also said that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, is not political enough. Is not being political enough for him. This is what I've heard anyway on the Grapevine, a podcast I listen to. So what do you think to that, Toby? I mean, that's what they're going for, isn't it? Just to put Trump in prison. That's their only hope.
Yeah, but it looks like the Supreme Court will come to Trump's rescue and say these aren't legitimate charges. You can't stop someone running for the presidency. He can't be indicted on these charges. So it looks like because Ruth Bader Ginsburg stayed beyond the time she should have retired, enabling Trump to replace her with a conservative justice. It looks like the libs are going to be hoisted on their own petard. Yeah,
that's interesting because there's two ways. Victor Davis Hanson said today there's two ways Trump can lose. One is the indictments, but he thinks he's getting out of that in the way you've said. And two, just saying something crazy that alienates everyone and taking the focus off Biden, which is what he's done with this NATO thing.
Yes, so he's perfectly capable of that.
Yeah, I'll give you the NATO thing. So I don't know if anyone saw this, but he was boasting about how he'd been really tough on NATO and what he'd said in the past in one of his speeches. And he said, and someone asked him, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? And Trump was like, no, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. He basically went full Joe Pesci. You got to pay. Hey, the fuck are you? You got to pay. That's what his thing was. You got to pay the bills. So he sounded so gangster. It was hilarious, but not like the best thing to say.
No.
I mean, it was funny because he's trying to say he was so tough on NATO and it worked. But now he just made everyone think at a time when everyone's worried about Russia that he'd just let Putin do what he wants, which they already claim he's mates with Putin. So it's a terrible thing to say when Biden's losing it for himself. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake, right? Yeah. Sun Tzu. I read Sun Tzu every morning after I meditate. But but go on, Toby. I mean, what do you think of that? Did Trump just mess it up?
It seemed quite scary, actually. If you're a resident of Europe and you're reliant on America's protection and the protection of NATO, Trump is essentially saying that if NATO countries don't pay their dues, then America would not protect them. I mean, that NATO principle is not supposed to be contingent on being up to date with paying your bills. It's like if they attack one of us, they're attacking us all, we come to that person's defense. It's like, so it seems slightly out of keeping with the general principle of collective security.
I love that. Russia starts invading Finland or something like that, and Trump, what are you going to do? He's like, check their card details. You know what I mean?
Have they check their credit rating?
Yeah, has their payment gone through this one? That's hilarious. But I mean, I think he was right to be tough with NATO, but yeah, the context to bring that up now was a bit of a mad thing. Even I'll say that, and I obviously think Trump's amazing, but even I will say that he occasionally can make a mistake. What do you think to that NATO thing? Did he make a mistake there? No. Oh no. Why? What should he have? Why aren't they paying? They gotta pay. Gotta pay your bills. Those are the rules. Yeah, you're right. Why aren't they paying, Toby? They should be paying. Our audience is so pro-Trump. They don't even.
I think.
But was he right to bring it up now? I agree they got to pay the bills. The question is, was he right to bring it up now when it's just an open goal for the media? Yeah, all right, yes, there you go. Yes, there you go, Toby. I knew our audience were more based than me, but than you. But now they're more based than me.
I think yes,
they're scaring me now.
I think to be fair to...
should Trump be a total dictator of the USA? Yes!
For one day.
What do you think?
Yeah.
If you're a farmer in Dodlick, Idaho, and you're trying to work where your tax money's going to, and guys, that's going to be addressed at some point. I'm sure it's not a great time to address it.
Oh yeah, where your tax money's going.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it won't go down badly. It won't go down badly with the Trump base, that's for sure. And I don't think he did say it in the immediate aftermath of Biden kind of screwing up. I think he said it at a rally some time ago. Someone brought it up.
Okay, well, I was going with Victor Davis Hansen's argument to be I thought it was being very fair and balanced, but I like that our audience is like, no, it was great. Fuck NATO. Okay, interesting. I think we've covered most of that Biden stuff, I reckon. Anything else about Biden anyone want to ask? I'm making it really interactive tonight. I'm just trying. It's something I'm trying. Won't do it again. But you don't give people too much, too much involvement. They get carried away. But all right, I think we've pretty much covered all my Biden-related points. I don't know what's going to... Oh, you didn't say that. Oh, yeah, you said Kamala Harris. Who do you think is going to be the replacement?
Big Mike.
Newsom. Big Mike? Did someone say Trump? Doesn't make any sense. Trump against Trump. It's Trump against Trump. That'd be amazing. Who? Taylor Swift. Yeah. She's basically running things. She's pulling the strings, isn't she? Taylor Swift, it's true. She's very influential. All right. Hillary. Yeah, Hillary comeback seems impossible now, doesn't it? I haven't even heard that. I think Big Mike because... I'll tell you why. Because Roger Stone said it, and he's always right. So Roger Stone a while ago said, like, DeSantis has no chance. He says he's too introverted. He doesn't like people. I mean, I'm pulling it off. But he said it doesn't work. He's not good with people. He's too awkward. He's going against Trump, who's like the most charismatic, famous guy of all time. He's just not got the chops. And Toby was back in DeSantis. I said he's got no chance. I was right. Doesn't matter. But I was just copying Roger Stone because he knows these things because he's been involved in campaigns, going back to Nixon. And he said ages ago, they're going to replace Biden with Michelle. Just watch. And at the time he said it, you're like, no way. But as it gets closer, you're like, ooh. But would she want to do it? There you go, yes, is the answer there. I love our crowd. They're like that meme of the Chad just going, yes, anything you say. Should Trump be a dictator? Yes. Just a decisive audience. All right.
It'll need to happen quite soon because as the primaries begin to happen, so he'll accumulate delegates and they're duty bound to support him if there's any challenge. So if it's going to happen, it'll have to happen pretty soon.
Yeah. Some people said, I heard that. Then someone said, did the electorate really care if it was like the day before? Would they care? People saying, can you do it at the convention? Apparently, it's like a bad thing to do it at the convention, but no one really cares. Okay.
Senator Cruz said that Big Mike would come in as a unity candidate.
Right.
At the last minute, like in August, they'll bring in a unity candidate, and it would be Michelle Obama. That's what Cruz said.
Okay.
It seems quite plausible. And the others would then stand down, and all the Democrats would align behind Michelle Obama.
By the way, firstly, I love our audience. Senator Cruz and Big Mike. That's like that's how partisan our crowd is. Like Senator Cruz, the illustrious senator, PhD, the Right Honourable Ted Cruz, great man, and then Big Mike with a penis, showing through a dress, would be a unity candidate. How would Big Mike? This is so ridiculous. I've never said Big Mike this many times in my life. This is like my quota now forever. How would Big Mike be a unity candidate?
Well, I take it that the other candidates would all want the role themselves, so that by it not going to them, but going to a third party.
A kind of a compromise so everyone's unhappy. Okay. But would she do it? I don't see why she... Maybe it's like Trump. He had a perfect life and then he went and did it. Maybe she would do it just for power. But she's already got a Netflix deal. Could she be asked? I mean, she's got the Netflix deal.
The temptation about taking on and possibly vanquishing Trump, claiming she saved America from a dictator, all of that must be quite tempting, I would have thought.
But do you think she's worried about them exposing all the pictures of when she was a man?
No, I contrary to your claims earlier, I don't actually think Michelle Obama is a man, and so I don't think she's particularly worried about being exposed as a man during the presidential campaign.
It could be one explanation why she's not come forward sooner, because I don't want to hammer this, even though it is hilarious, but to be fair, Toby, I said, look, there's never been a picture of Michelle Obama pregnant, and you tried to rebut me, but you sent me a picture of a different black woman, so
That's true.
That didn't work at all for you. So no one can find a picture. I'm just saying. I'm just asking. No one can find a picture of her pregnant or looking like a woman. No, she looks like a woman.
It feels like. I think the reason I think Trump probably won't go there is because I'm not sure it played very well for him when he claimed that Obama, the birth certificate thing, that made him look slightly ridiculous, and this would, I think, make him look even more ridiculous.
Though he did keep saying it a lot of times. So I think it's interesting. It's interesting. All right. Well, that could be amazing. Trump versus Big Mike. All right. I didn't think it was going to go there, but I went there. I will go there. That's what they say. So, all right, should we move on and do a bit of domestic stuff then with our friend Rishi, old Richard Sunak. I think it was Richard Sunak sometimes. I don't know why. Dr. Richard Sunak. I don't know why. I just like, that's how I see him. And, Biden called him Rashid Sunak, didn't he, famously? But yeah, that's obvious. And but at least he's a man, though very small. But we don't know. I don't have a go at height because I'm not that tall, taller than Toby, but I'm not that tall. And people think I'm smaller than I am on the internet, which really annoys me because I'm very normal height. But then some people, I stood next to Leo once, so it's a big mistake. He's like 7'6". And the point is, Rishi though, he is so small that he's like, I don't mean too harsh. Didn't mean to talk about that. But he is a man though. That's the main thing. And anyway, he had this exchange with Starmer. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm hallucinating. So he had that exchange with Starmer in the House of Commons where he was doing a standard attack on Starmer. He's saying like he's done all these U-turns. And he goes, in fairness, he talked about his position on a woman. He said, his U-turn on that. In fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn, which was a reference to Starmer saying 99% of women are women or whatever the hell he said. And then Starmer starts going, how dare you? How dare you? Because Brianna Jai's mother was in the chamber, or some people say on the way to the chamber, and he said, shame, like he said, parading as a man of integrity when he's got absolutely no responsibility. So to me now, that was so, and everyone said, it was terrible that Rishi brought this up because, it's terrible. But to me, it was just, Starmer was the one bringing it up. I mean, he's the one making hay out of it, going, shame, how terrible. And it's like, you're doing the exact same thing. Well, at least the same.
Yeah.
I'm angry.
I mean, there was you would have thought that it was a mistake on Starmer's part to say that. And that was my initial reaction. That's below the belt. You're not even supposed to refer to people in the gallery of the House of Commons. And trying to claim Brianna Jai as a victim of transphobia is extremely difficult. Even the lead detective who investigated her murder said that the 2 teenagers that conspired to murder her had 4 other teenagers on the list, none of whom were trans. And it doesn't seem, even contrary to what the judge said, the lead detective anyway, said he didn't think it is a hate crime. It was motivated by transphobia. But of course, that hasn't stopped the kind of woke gender lobby from claiming her as a kind of victim to advance their particular agenda, which is what Keir Starmer seemed to be doing then. But it has played better for Keir Starmer than I thought it would. The entire woke church has kind of rolled in behind him. People have, even seemingly quite neutral people have said that they thought it was a gaffe on Rishi's part. I mean, Starmer didn't have a good week last week. I mean, he abandoned the 28 billion a year investing in green gobbledygook policy. He unveiled his Race Equality Act, which on the face of it looked to be pretty feeble, saying he wants to make it illegal for employers to discriminate against black people in the workplace, as though it's currently legal for employers to pay black employees less because they're black. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. So he wasn't having a great week, but somehow, because he was able to kind of portray Rishi as committing a gaffe, his week improved and Rishi had an even worse week than him. And what Starmer seems to be quite politically skilled at is kind of playing these kind of culture war cards, whilst at the same time making Rishi look kind of cheap and kind of a bit deranged for kind of leaning into the culture war. And it's like, no, you're leaning into the culture war by citing Brianna Jai's trans identity as a reason to try and shame Rishi because he rightly called you out for being confused and inconsistent on this particular issue. But somehow he managed to portray Rishi as being the kind of cheap, jibe-making culture warrior and claim the kind of non-culture warrior high ground for himself, which he's done before. I mean, even though he is obviously kind of leaning into the culture war, as much as, if not more, than Rishi. But anyway, he seems to have pulled off that sleight of hand now a few times.
Yeah, exactly. When he said Tories' culture wars of their own making and all that stuff. I know he is quite good at doing that. And Esther Jai was invited by Charlotte Nichols, who's the one that said people should be able to change their gender when they're dead. And not to speak ill of the dead, by the way, but on that point, by the way, some people will be shouting at you because you even call Brianna Jai her, and people like they shout at Andrew Doyle now about anything. But that's controversial. But also, as you said, it doesn't seem to be related to the trans thing. There was there was a girl put in this inclusion class or unit with her or him, whatever, and that girl had poisoned someone in a previous school. So it was far more about safeguarding, wasn't it? It was like, why are you letting someone in who's poisoned someone? And then she got obsessed, and then horrific. But as to the actual incident in the comments, well, Rishi had something to say about it later. He said, I've nothing but heartfelt sympathy for the entire family and friends, but to use that tragedy to detract from the very separate and clear point I was making about Keir Starmer's proven track record of multiple U-turns on major policies because he doesn't have a plan, I think is both sad and wrong and demonstrates the worst of politics. I actually agree with that, but that's not how it's gone down in public, has it? For some reason, Rishi's not that good at politics, is he? It's a bit of a problem, isn't it, when you're Prime Minister? I mean, everyone says he's a hard worker and, very smart, but he's just not great at politics, doesn't have a story. As Dominic Cummings has pointed out, he could have been good, but he's sort of, I don't know, he's lost it. We've talked about this a lot, obviously, but I don't know what's going to happen. Who's going to be next leader of the... Let's just ask some people while we're here. Who do you think is going to be next leader?
Of the Conservative Party? Well, as you know, I have a bet on Kemi Badenoch becoming the next leader. Got very good odds because I think the bookmakers were thinking of it as... was next Prime Minister, not next leader, actually, and got, I think, from Betfred, something like 32 to 1. And the reason I think the odds were so generous is because they had conceived of it as, well, what are the chances of Rishi winning the next general election and then stepping down and being replaced by Kemi Badenoch? Whereas the way I think about it is, well, what if Rishi is deposed before the election and being replaced by Kemi, and then she will, at least for a short period, be the Prime Minister. So I think it's quite a good bet. Decent bet. Who thinks Kemi? Yeah? Okay. Who thinks it'll be Penny Mordaunt? I'm just saying what you think, not what you want. I mean, she polled very well. She's good with a sword. I mean, the way she held that sword for ages while looking attractive, it was incredible. Is that really misogynist? That's basically what she did. She held a sword very well. Totally woke. So who thinks it'll be Farage? It's an outside bet. No one knows how it can happen. Yeah. I say it'll be Lord Frost only because he's a fan of our show. Pure brown nosing. But who do you think? Who else is there? There's maybe Jeremy Hunt.
Suella's got no one even talks about Suella in that.
Tom Tugendhat might throw his hat in the ring.
Tom Tugendhat. Come on, Toby. That's ludicrous. Ludicrous. Okay, well, who thinks the Tories are finished? Yeah. What's going to happen? Just like reform take over? Yes. Okay, reform. What was that? Labour will win. We all know Labour will win, mate. That's like Route 1 analysis. Putin is bad. That's like, come on. We all know Labour are going to win. The question is, what happens to the Tories? We're assuming that. You don't know how black-pilled our audience are. They basically think the whole country's over. Trust me. I did a post about that recently, got 10,000 likes. Everyone thinks we're finished. This is like we're in a bunker. We're underground in a bunker trying to salvage the country with a kind of breakaway, a friend of mine calls it the Neo-Byzantium. We're trying to form, only us are left. Let's not get into like how that would work, like with the breeding or something. There's only us left. We're in this bunker. Britain's like flames. It's just like Keir Starmer, just mostly peaceful fire everywhere, and like Starmer just destroying everything. And then it's like, right, we're in a basement trying to think, how can we get out of this? And the question is, what's going to happen? Are the Tories destroyed completely and reform come through, or is it a new Tories helmed by some of our fans here? What do you think?
I think that we're talking. I actually stand for Reform UK.
Okay, so you're a bit biased.
And
this guy's chairman of Reform. Okay, he's just going to give his unbiased opinion.
We are talking to an awful lot of people from the Conservative Party. Sorry, Tory Party. I shouldn't call them that. So from the Tory Party, they may come across one at a time. My concern is they're probably actually going to come across in a big group, and then they will actually have leverage. And then they can start talking to us about, changing what we're doing to a certain degree and maybe forming a new party.
Who comes across? The Tories come across to Reform in a big group with Suella and all these people.
No, the ERG, the Spartans.
The Spartans.
There's only a few Conservatives left in the Tory party.
Yes, well, we all agree with that. That's just a fact. Okay, and you're running for Reform. I'm not sure if you want to out yourself as who you are, but you can if you want and get a plug.
I'm standing in Bromley and Biggin Hill.
Bromley and Biggin Hill.
London Assembly for Bexley and Bromley.
We got your one fan there. That's a start. Reform's only got about 12 people, so that's a good start. No, you're doing very well. You're polling very well, Reform. And what's your view on Big Mike? I'm joking. I love if Richard Tice came out. Look, net zero is absolute nonsense, and Michelle Obama is a man. Okay, those are our policies. You don't have to have a view on it.
And I can imagine, Guardian headline: Reform parliamentary candidate accuses Michelle Obama. No.
Yeah.
Traffics in Michelle Obama is a man conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Would
Was
Richard Tice stand by you, do you think?
Yeah. It'll be that, and it was at show with far-right comedian. And Toby Young cancelled from 5 public positions. Anyway, sorry, carry on. Go on.
Thursday by-election, Wellingborough and Kingswood, but Wellingborough with Benderby, I'm really interested in what that's going to be like.
Okay.
That hopefully is a bit of a litmus paper for what's going to happen in the next year.
All right.
Yeah. Which reminds me that one other thing we were going to talk about is that even though Starmer did seem to win that skirmish with Rishi Sunak at PMQs and recover slightly from what should have been a very bad week for the Labour leader, he hasn't had a great time since, because this issue has blown up over the weekend of the prospective Labour parliamentary candidate in Rochdale, where there's another by-election coming up, claiming that Israel permitted Hamas's attack on October 7th. And he's
and just because it's true.
I'm
joking.
He's now walked it back.
It's terrible.
Labour's defence is that if they were to withdraw their support from their candidate in Rochdale, that would help George Galloway, who's also standing as a candidate in that particular by-election, and he'd be even worse than this guy. So the best they can do is continue to support their candidate and hope Labour wins and that it all blows over.
Yes,
Makes
and
them
just
look weak.
for the record, in case Galloway sues, those are the views of Toby Young, not the Weekly Sceptic podcast. That's my position. So exactly, you've got the Rochdale by-election on the February 29th, and this guy, Azhar Ali, and in his private, was it a private meeting, or was it just some sort of, what was it in? It was just after October 7th, and he said that Israel deliberately took the security off. They allowed the massacre because they believed it would give them the green light to do whatever they bloody want. And then he's now apologised for that and said, I apologise unreservedly to the Jewish community for my comments, which were deeply offensive, ignorant and false. I mean, it's like the least sincere apology of all time. You don't really go from October, it was the Jews, to like February, I was deeply wrong, and like, you know what I mean? That's like, you totally think they did it on purpose, right? You're not going to change your mind on that. It's like these 9/11 truthers, they don't change their mind 3 months later.
No, I mean...
And 9/11 was dodgy, by the way, but that's not the same as... It was way more dodgy than October 7th. So that was Azhar Ali. Did everyone see that? Does everyone think, what are they going to keep this guy and make him, and he's going to still stand in the election?
Yeah.
Unless anyone's heard different. That was last I checked. They've stopped.
Have they? What was...
Last 20 minutes.
Last
look
20
at that.
minutes. Breaking news.
Live show. Amazing. So
it is going to be George Galloway. Whoopee.
A great man, nice hats, as we've always said here. He's big on with the Muslims. He's a fan of the Muslims, isn't he, George Galloway? He's just got his base.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of George Galloway's
I'm
because...
glad you said that. I was going to say something else then. Go on.
When I was cancelled in 2018, George Galloway said that he had liked my book, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, but since discovering all these unspeakable things I'd said on Twitter over the years, he realised that my mind was like a sewer. It's like,
so you read your whole book and didn't realise what you were like.
Yeah, so not a huge fan.
Wow, there are a lot of people threw you under the bus there, didn't they? So hang on, can we just get clear? If they've withdrawn their support for this guy, Ali, in Rochdale, so what are they going to do then? Who do they put in? Does anyone know? They can't do anything? Oh, so just be a dead man, like a zombie candidate, a dead man walking, reforms out the room. They've had enough. They're like, I can capitalise on this if I'm quick.
See if he can still get his nomination papers in for Rochdale. Yeah. Better than Bexley Heath. Yeah.
Wow. This is good. I like this new interactive forum. I've just done it because I'm desperate and panicking, but I like the way it's worked out. Panicking for material. All right, we've done about 15 minutes. Let's get into the army. Does anyone see about this other story, DEI in the army? Yeah, everyone groaning. Yeah, fucking this country. All right, well, Toby's bigger on this than me, but I've got a few things. There was this race action plan, the British Army race action plan, which wanted to boost representation and describe security clearance vetting as being the primary barrier to non-UK personnel gaining a commission in the army, and vows to challenge security clearance requirements, which sounds bad to the layman. And Grant Shapps was said to be furious about this, and he's a very principled sort of guy, and he was like, he was said this is woke nonsense, and he was no chance I'll be lowering the security clearance requirements on my watch, and no one should be offended, he also added, by having religion as part of the remembrance service, which was a whole different topic. Toby's going to explain it all. Toby, the army nonsense.
Yeah, no, it's extraordinary how captured the armed forces have become by the woke church. This was Stephen Edgington at The Telegraph has run a series of great stories exposing the extent of the capture, it's come at a particularly this expose has come at a particularly embarrassing time because we're being menaced by Russia, and we can't seem to get our aircraft carrier to the Red Sea and play our part in defending the shipping lanes. It's all incredibly embarrassing, and to add to the embarrassment, these 12 former senior military officers, referred to in the press as flag carriers, but I don't think they meant rainbow flags. But they've published this extraordinary letter, and in particular, they singled out the fact that as part of the British Army's race action plan, they're going to relax the security clearances required by non-British nationals who apply for jobs as officers in the British Army, including in the intelligence corps. So they want to reduce the security clearances that they currently have in place for non-Brits to access sensitive intelligence about the state of our readiness and the state of our armed forces. Absolutely extraordinary. And they said in this letter, they said the Russians, Iranians and Chinese will be observing our descent into self-hatred and obsessing over diversity and inclusion with glee. Nothing could be better calculated to destroy the esprit de corps of our armed forces than this poisonous farrago of nonsense, or to deter from serving the crown, precisely the type of people most motivated and apt to our high calling. Ours is a tolerant country, and this obsessive racializing of everything is both disgusting and reprehensible. So hard to disagree with a word of that. And it seems like, it's one thing for this kind of self-flagellating, Britain-hating cult to take over our universities, our museums, the arts sector, even the civil service. But for it to take over the armed forces does seem like a real security threat. Yes. How are we going to stand up to all these menacing bad actors if we don't have an army willing to die for king and country and to defend the realm?
That sounded like a speech. I just instinctively clapped. And Toby, by the way, is running in Rochdale as the candidate for Toby Party. But yeah, and that thing about alienating the most motivated, I've said it before, but you probably saw they released that guidance, didn't they? It came out in 2019. It was from 2017. The Army, they give this guidance to top Army people of extreme right-wing indicators. And one of them was people who describe themselves as patriots. So it's like, if you're going to alienate patriots from the Army, we're completely lost. So it's absolutely insane. I want to ask, since we've got a live crowd here, would you guys, if age was no factor, would you, for some people, would you, I'd be too old, but would you sign up for the Army if you were conscripted or, no. Not now, exactly. I wrote a whole Substack about this. It's like you've alienated. I mean, loads of people have said this. I mean, Tim Stanley said it in The Spectator. Why would we sign up for this neoliberal globalist project that hates us, that tells us we have no home, and we're a citizen of Europe, right? And we're basically scum. Then you've got the lefties who hate the country anyway, and they want to decolonize everything. They're not going to sign up. So you're not going to get the patriots or the lefties. So all you've got left is the Remainer blob people, and they're not going to fight, are they? They're like too busy telling us about light bulbs and like. They're just not the kind of people that are going to fight. As I said in my piece, wars are won by working class people with a strong moral compass and lack of opportunity, getting together with posh people who have an old-fashioned sense of duty, a thin mustache, and a weird desire to kill foreigners. That's like...
the backbone of the empire.
Yeah. That's basically what Churchill was, except the mustache. So that's like, he was in like 5 wars, Churchill. It's mental. He was in like 5 wars. There was one war, there was in the Boer War, then he was in the First World War briefly. He even showed up in the Second World War just to fire a cannon. He absolutely loved it. He was in literally 5 wars. So he loved war. But we don't have that anymore. We have no sense of duty. You've alienated the people who would serve. And now you're doing all this woke stuff in the Army. And meanwhile, Putin's just laughing at us in a 30-minute lecture to Tucker Carlson. So yeah, we're in a lot of trouble. Okay, that's the army story. Maybe I'll take a quick costume change now, Toby, and you can do our first ad.
I can do our ad. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I'm going to go and I'll be back. We've got an ad. Was it Thor?
Thor,
Is
yes.
he here tonight?
He's not here tonight, unfortunately.
What a
he couldn't
slacker.
be here.
Oh, well.
He is our most
right,
the most loyal sponsor of this show. So I'm going to read out an ad from Thor. This is a personal note from Thor Holt. Sorry I couldn't be here tonight. I'm currently swimming to Shetland, not avoiding conscription, but because cold water wild swimmers are the new vegans. We have to tell you, we wild swim in Scotland in cold water. Seriously, I wanted to say well done, Nick and Toby, for what you've built with the Weekly Sceptic, and I also recognise the extra effort the live show represents. Thank you, Thor. While nothing beats face-to-face public speaking for engagement, there's no edit button to spare blushes. Hence, public speaking remains a confidence-sapping fear for many who might boost their career or business this way. So if you'd like to conquer your fear of public speaking for your career or in your business, message Thor on 07906 321 593. That's 07906 321 593. Or you can connect with Thor on linkedin.com/in/Thor Holt, all one word. And as Dan, a client of Thor's, said, Thor helped me fight through one of my biggest fears, public speaking. Turned my phobia into confidence. My speech went amazingly. People laughed at my jokes. They asked loads of questions. I was even invited to speak at another event. Thank you, Thor. You're a superstar. So you can WhatsApp Thor on 07906 321 593 or connect with him on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Thor Holt. And he promises not to mention cold water swimming. So let's have a quick round of applause for our great and loyal sponsor, Thor Holt. Message him. He's a great coach. So, I think we now have. I think Nick is about to return. No, I think just some latecomers. So rushing to put their papers in Rochdale. So yeah, we've been slightly wrong-footed by the news that Keir Starmer's finally done the right thing, but it kind of testifies to his lack of political fleet-footedness that it's taken him this long to finally decide that Labour should in fact withdraw its support from this candidate who is trafficking in what I think is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So here he's back. He's back. Our host is back.
I forgot I was doing a show for a minute. I was chatting to people about a big mic. It wasn't that. Okay, so you've done the advert, and anyone can advertise. Did you say that anyone can advertise? Did you do a plug for that?
Yeah, anyone can advertise on the Weekly Sceptic, and to do that, you just have to email weeklysceptic@gmail.com. Our rates are very competitive, and
we have like 20,000 people a week, and we've had like 1 million downloads.
We've had over 1 million downloads. Sometimes more than 25,000 people upload each individual episode.
All right, so just after 8, does anyone care about? I'm just wondering whether to do the pond or whether to do Pete Woke. I don't know how people are feeling. We've got maybe we'll do this one quickly. So we'll do our occasional section, which is across the pond. So there was an interesting story where Selma Blair was cancelled. Did anyone see this? Okay, so Selma Blair's like an actor, but let's see if anyone cares about this. She's an actor in some very good films back in the day. But she was responding to an Instagram post from this guy, Abraham Hamra. And she put out this comment. Thank you very much. Deport all these terrorist-supporting goons. Islam has destroyed Muslim countries, and then they come here and destroy minds. They know they are liars, twisted justifications. May they meet their fate. Weirdly, that didn't go that well in Hollywood. Like, that's she's really gone for it. That's incredible. That's like some of Toby's tweets before he got cancelled. That is extreme. And so she's done anti-woke posts before and stuff, but she went in hard with that one. And she sort of has Jewish background. She's converted to Judaism, so she feels very strongly about it, and she got cancelled for that. What I'm thinking now is there's so many people cancelled. We've got Kevin Spacey, we've got Gina Carano, we'll get onto in a sec. Johnny Depp is kind of cancelled, isn't he? Vincent Gallo's always been on that side. He's a brilliant actor. You've got people like Dennis Quaid appeared on Tucker Carlson. I think now we can make quite a nice alternative Hollywood that's actually way better than the shit Hollywood. Don't you think? Of just like based people, Clint Eastwood.
Well, I've always said this, that the ranks of the cancelled are becoming much more glamorous and attractive than the uncancelled. I mean, it's an inevitable consequence, which I don't think the cancellation mob's really thought through, which is if you cancel so many people, if you're constantly cancelling people, at some point it loses some of its sting. It's just like, you could adapt Andy Warhol's famous phrase and say, in the future, everyone will be cancelled for 15 minutes. But they've cancelled now, Shakespeare, Darwin, Faraday. I mean, it's extraordinary how many people are being cancelled, how many geniuses. I think it's almost a source of shame not to have been cancelled now.
Yeah, it's better to be cancelled, then you just all right from then. Once you're cancelled, you go on GB News, it's all fine, and you do the podcast like this, and that's it. It's much more relaxing. You just get to tell the truth to an extent. You can't just go around talking about Big Mike all day. You've got to be careful. You've got to rein it in. But all right, no one really cares about that story. I mean, it is quite interesting just seeing all these actors getting cancelled and see what happens with that.
That brings us to the end of the free version of the Weekly Sceptic Live. If you want to listen or watch the remainder of the show, and believe me, it gets pretty lively, you have to go to basedmedia.org and become a premium subscriber. But the good news is you can become a premium subscriber for as little as £5 a month. And not only does that give you access to the premium extended version of the Weekly Sceptic, you'll also be able to listen to or watch the premium versions of other podcasts we're going to put on the platform in due course. One final thing. Many of you who've already subscribed have asked whether it will be possible to download the extended version of the podcast on your preferred podcasting app. And the answer is yes. We're about to introduce that functionality. It may even be up and running by the time you listen to this. But yeah, if you become a premium subscriber, you will be able to download the extended version of the podcast and listen to that in your car on the way to work. You don't have to do it on the basedmedia.org platform. But thank you if you've already subscribed, and if you haven't, what are you waiting for? Go watch the rest of the Weekly Sceptic Live for as little as £5 a month.